Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us today from. I'd like to welcome you to this World Built Environment Forum webinar series. The title of today's webinar is How Are Cities Accelerating Progress Towards a Sustainable Future, which is being run in partnership with Arcadis. Before we begin, I'm going to give you a brief introduction about myself. My name is Anil Sahani. I'm the head of sustainability for the RICS. I'm also a member of the RICS and the chair of the International Cost Management Standard Setting Committee. In today's webinar, we will be discussing how our cities accelerating progress towards a sustainable future, which connects very well with the 2024 Arcadis report on the sustainability of cities. But before we begin, I just want to set the stage by giving you a highlight of RICS's sustainability strategy on behalf of our members. Our sustainability strategy currently encompasses 4 major themes of decarbonization, circularity, resilience, and biodiversity. Supporting these themes, we also have 4 cross-cutting focus areas, which are standardizing metrics for measurement and management of sustainability, influencing decision makers for positive change, providing guidance, training, and support to our members and stakeholders, and very importantly, leveraging data and technology. So today's webinar topic actually connects so very well with these themes and focus areas. The 2024 Arcadis Sustainability Cities Index report is an excellent way to maintain connection between the 4 themes and the focus areas that I mentioned, especially looking at environmental, social, and economic outcomes. What I really like about the Sustainability Cities Index report is the 4th pillar or dimension, which is progress. To us, progress connects very well with governance, so it ties up everything together on environmental, social, economic, and governance. Like everybody, I also peeked into the report, searched for the cities that I would like to see high on the list, and definitely the Washington, D.C. area appears in the top 50. Another city that I grew up in is in the top 100. Delhi is making good progress, but not really where one would like to see, especially on the aspects of environmental outcomes. So with that, I think my role today is going to be moderating, keeping time, asking questions, and letting our experts speak. So at this stage, I'd like to introduce our panel today. The first panel member, and I'm going to request them to join, turn on their cameras and say hi to all of you. Celine Creston, Chief Sustainability Strategy and Sustainability Officer for Paris La Défense. Then we have Celine, please go ahead.
Hello, nice to meet you all, and thanks for the invite. I work for Paris La Défense, which is the French business district close to Paris.
Next expert is Caroline Carrels, Global Director, Energy Transition from Arcadis. Hi,
yes,
Caroline.
Hi, Anil. My name is Caroline. I'm from Amsterdam, and I'm the Global Director for Energy Transition, and used to be the colleague of Peter Hogg, who is in London.
Peter, you are next up. Peter Hogg, Fellow of the RICS, London City Executive for Arcadis.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's delightful to be here with you. As Anil has said, my name is Peter Hogg, and I'm Arcadis' London City Executive.
Next expert is Stuart Rogers, who's Director of Project Management for the Northwest for Muse. Hi, Stuart.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Stuart. I'm from a property development company called Muse, based in Manchester in the UK.
Thank you. So with that, I think let me begin our discussion. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. We have over close to 350 registrations from 47 countries. Really fantastic to see all of you on this webinar. We want to make this as interactive as possible. Please submit your questions to our panel. We'll try to weave them and make the conversation live. If you have new to this webinar, you should see that you can submit questions at any time using the question box on your screen. We'll try and weave them in as quickly as possible. Also, I'd like to highlight that you can download the Arcadis Sustainable Cities Index 2024 report, which is provided to you in your chat. Go search for the city that you like and see where that falls in the top 100. Useful exercise to get going with the report. So let me begin with a question, which is, I'm going to ask Peter to start. This is really your opening statement that connects us with our discussion today. So the question to you all is, what are the key characteristics of a sustainable city? And what do you see as the biggest challenges cities face in achieving the 2030 UN SDG deadline? Peter.
Anil, thank you very much. That's a very, very big topic to try and cover off in 2 minutes, but I shall do my best. Look, at Arcadis, as the Sustainable Cities Index makes clear, we define a sustainable city very broadly. So we would focus on sustainability in terms of the people context, the planet context, and the profit context. We would also underline all of that by talking increasingly about what progress cities are making towards being truly sustainable cities. So for us, you've got to frame the definition of a sustainable city in that very, very context. It's no use just talking about the environmental or planet aspects. It's no use just speaking about the economic context. And it's no use just speaking about the people. You have to look at cities and city sustainabilities as a whole system issue. And you have to track in this very, very fast moving world how quickly and what steps cities are making to become sustainable. Which kind of brings me to the second part of your question, Anil, which is, what are the impediments that cities are seeing towards becoming truly sustainable in all of those goals? So I think, one of the things that we see is a lack of alignment and a lack of clarity on what the definition of a sustainable city is. So we see certain cities focusing very, very much on one of those four elements rather than looking across the piece in all of it. And it's no coincidence that in our Sustainable Cities Index, the high-performing cities are the ones that are being sustainable in all three of those pillars and demonstrating the progress. So I think the key impediment that I'd like our audience to focus on today is how you get consistency in looking at sustainability from a city leadership point of view, in terms of people, in terms of planet, and in terms of profit.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to now request Celine to give her response to this question, then Caroline and Stuart.
I do think as well that the overall stake in place regarding sustainability for cities is to manage something quite balanced between planets, people living here, the communities and stakeholders, and without forgetting the ability to make investments to gain a kind of profitability over the years, or not to forget that. And it's a permanent discrepancies between those contradictory injunctions. Sometimes the teams have the feeling that they have to make choice between profitability or sustainability. Definitely this is a change of model that is required, even regarding the companies, the businesses, but also regarding the cities. So I do share the definition of sustainability that Peter just drew for us.
And so do I, of course, from Amsterdam. This is the 6th edition of the Sustainable Cities Index, but the first time that Amsterdam is on #1 in my city, so I'm very proud. And I think the biggest challenge is to keep the city affordable. People tend to go to the bigger cities and metropolitan areas. And there's, for example, a housing market, but it's getting more and more tough to get in. And that is something to be very keen on. Something else is more in the planet pillar. I think we need to make the transition from fossil to renewable. And there's good news because that saves money as well. When we do energy transition in the cities in Europe, the bill is going down and the innovative solutions are going up because energy is very, very costly these days. So when you give some attention to energy as a very important aspect of savings, you can save immediately a lot of money. Also, when you are a little bit smarter than before by things like energy storage, that you can do peak shaving. So when the energy prices are high, you store it. When they're low, you use it. And we have a lot of experience with that in parts of the city like the stadiums, soccer stadiums, or convention centers. They can be mobility and energy hubs as well.
Stuart, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd echo everything that everyone said before me, actually, and I think Peter's point that it's very broad is probably the best way to put it. But I guess from our perspective, if we talk about what are the characteristics, it's the way people think about and respond and deal with the challenges that we have around sustainability. And that's from somebody living in their home who has no idea of the built environment to the leadership who drive the vision within a place in a city, who are actually bringing a place together. So this kind of giving opportunity both in the public and the private sector. It has to be it's a whole connected vision for that city to drive forward. So yes, connected infrastructure, kind of active travels, transport connections are all kind of the end goal. But I think to get there, for me, the characteristics have to be a connected vision about place that goes cross-sector and all the way from the leaders of that city down to, children in schools, who actually, a lot of the work that we're doing are the ones that drive the impossible, because they kind of haven't got the prudence to think that something isn't possible. And they're actually some of the thoughts and ideas that are coming out of the younger generation into the industry are the ones that are actually driving forward what we think is possible. So something that allows that harnesses innovation and challenge and thought.
Excellent. Thank you so much, all. This was really an excellent scene setting. When I was, after our prep call, when I was thinking about this topic, two things really came across to me. One, sometimes we sit in our silos as technical folks. I'm a QS, construction project management person. So generally, I think in terms of individual projects and assets. But this topic really helps you connect all these projects into systems and systems of systems, which are essentially our cities. And then secondly, when I try to think about this topic as a citizen of large city, I've lived in several global large cities. What do I really want from the city? It's essentially, to me, it's the 5th P, which is prosperity. So if I'm able to prosper in a city, and those are 4 pillars of people, planet, profit, and progress really contribute towards that prosperity. So with that, let's move on to our next question. The second question is slightly going deeper into the Arcadis Sustainability Cities Index 2024, which measures urban sustainability across the 4 pillars of planet, people, profit, progress. How can cities achieve sustainability across all 4 of these pillars? I'm going to request Caroline to start, and then Celine, if you can please add 2 to 3 minutes of your wisdom on this.
Thank you, Anil. Yes, I think there's some very important aspects. The first one is that you need a long-term vision on your city. What is Amsterdam doing in 250, 260? You know, you don't change a city overnight, and we have to bring in the new aspects of sustainability in city planning as well. And that means that you need to combine housing and mobility and energy transition, but also water management, climate adaptation, etc. And that brings me to the second point, an integrated approach. You don't look in silos anymore, but you combine the different challenges you have in the city. And when you combine, for example, housing and mobility, and you create a mobility hub in front or upon a railway station, you have a win-win situation, because that makes your city more sustainable as well. The third aspect that I want to mention is public-private partnership. The public partners are having specific conditions and authorities, and they need to challenge the private partners to be more ambitious in their sustainability, in their approach. For example, when you create a new office building, it can be very energy efficient. It can be based on renewable energy. You can take care of biodiversity. You can be very keen on the water management in your building. And we in the Netherlands really have to do that, because we are, for example, in Amsterdam below sea level. So you have to be very keen on water management. You have to be keen on the digital opportunities, because you can be so much smarter than 20, 30 years ago. You can use artificial intelligence, you can use all kind of data, and you can combine them to create sustainable neighborhoods, to create a sustainable city. So it's the long-term approach, it's an integrated approach, public and private partners together with a good sense of ambition. Without ambition, you will get nowhere. Thank you, Anil.
I do share some of the views and the overall perspective. We, as the city is permanent, we build cities for ages and centuries. The long-term perspective is also very important. And in France, the role of this long-term perspective is mainly on cities and the public parts. So for Paris La Défense, it's one of the pillar. After COVID and lockdowns, we decided to take a brand new strategic course with a systemic approach, which was completely different with what we were thinking with before on our projects. Sustainability was there, but it was not systemic, I would say. And we decided that our ultimate goal for Paris La Défense is to become the first post-carbon global business district. Post-carbon business district, which is, of course, a long-term strategy. And by post-carbon, we mean exit of fossil fuels, mitigation, lower our carbon footprints, climate risk adaptation. With a heater world, there will be climate events, strong climate. We have to get adapted to that and to anticipate. And last but not the least, a balanced social and urban development, which is kind of the people pillar Peter was mentioning. Not to forget the people who live there. We have 52,000 residents, almost 200,000 workers every day, 70,000 students. We have to take care of people in that perspective. And to organize something more systemic, we changed some methods of considering projects, activities, is to develop the involvement of stakeholders. And our stakeholders are wide. It's the businesses, the owners of the buildings, the local associations, the residents, the people, the asset managers, lots of individuals and companies that we gather towards that objective to become post-carbon. That's how I would water prep our strategy regarding those overall approach.
Thank you both. Just maybe to put you on the spot a little bit, Caroline, in Amsterdam, topped the SCI index, but slightly lower on the people scale, and same with Paris. Why do you suppose that is? I think you briefly explained, probably linked to housing and affordability. Do you agree? Would you want to say briefly, Caroline, on Amsterdam and Celine on Paris?
Yes, there's one answer: affordable housing. It's hard to create affordable housing because the market is so hot. We have a lot of international companies here, a lot of expats with good incomes, and then we have to take care of social housing, affordable housing, because we need the key figures in the cities as well. For example, the police agents, the teachers, the nurses, etc. So that is a main challenge, and that's the reason why we are not that good anymore on the people pillar, although equality is still very important in our city values.
In the Parisian region, the housing stake is also very strong with the markets, with the increase of the housing markets over the past years due to the low level of the rates. That's also an important issue in La Défense. We have a role of a developer, land developer, as well with our day-to-day maintenance activities or mission, and we develop. We contribute to develop 4,000 housing units, which are affordable, social housing, but also affordable housing. So we try to take a part of the needs on our 6 kilometers area that we are in charge of. But the people is also sometimes in La Défense we meet people out of housing at all, and there are local associations that organize kind of charity. We try to have a role on that, helping with donation or several activities to make sure that the community of the businesses can have a role to improve the situation globally and not to forget anyone.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Moving along, I think very crucial to understand that this is not one-time snapshot. You need to see progress, and that's where I think momentum comes in. Peter and then Stuart, if you can help us understand a bit about what differentiates cities that are able to maintain sustainability momentum from those that either lose or lack momentum.
Yes, of course, Emil. I think for me, strong focus leadership that prioritizes sustainability is clear. And that's not just political leadership, that's business and societal leadership as well. So I think you need that clear leadership. I think also one of the things that the index tells us, and our research into this area tells us, that the more you balance between the pillars, the more you are likely to be able to sustain your move, your momentum into sustainability. So that balance is critical. And I think the final point that I'd make, which sometimes gets overlooked because it's quite easy to think that everybody gets the value of urban sustainability and creating sustainable cities. Everybody takes it as self-evident that that is a good and the right thing to do. So one of the things we see in really successful cities, and I think, Caroline, it would be good to explore Amsterdam around this, so I think Amsterdam has done this very well, is the ability to articulate the what's in it for me. So individual citizens, the business community, the civic community, foreign direct investors, all the stakeholders in the cities can access a ready and a compelling answer to what is in it for them to focus on and to prioritize making a city sustainable. And I think that often gets forgotten. It's often not given enough significance in terms of the sort of cultural DNA of the city and its communities.
Stuart.
Yeah, I guess back to my original point, and I would tend to agree with Peter's first point, is strong leadership cross industry and all the way from the city leaders through the businesses to the individuals that are going to drive change. We find in what we do in long-term partnership, property and regeneration, it's very easy to maintain the status quo and not try and drive to be a bit better every time. It's hard to do that. So you have to, the amount of effort you have to put in to make minimal gains is incredible. But if you don't, you never make the gains. So there's a commitment, a kind of an unrelenting commitment to be better and change. And I think from our perspective, the most successful places we work in understand what they've got and the natural assets that they have, and whether their challenges around infrastructure, water, people, socioeconomic, they understand the place and what their needs are. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach to success. And those places that do understand what they have, back to Peter's point, they're the ones that attract the most investment. And that's where you see them grow. And then the investment does come with requirements and needs and demands for more sustainable property, infrastructure, workforce, healthier neighbourhoods. It all flows and kind of starts to it's all linked, so it forms this chain reaction. But if you drive that from kind of the business leaders across a place, that's when the investment starts to come. So we do find that there's a quite severe lack of investment in those places that are doing the minimum and maintaining the status quo.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Peter. I do have a sort of a follow-up for you, Peter. I noticed that in the report, the progress pillar helps you plot the 4 quadrants. I'm very keen on one of the quadrants, which is cities lacking momentum. Do you have any broad strategies? I know you've spoken about strategies to maintain, grow momentum and so on, but any specific things that you feel that cities that are lacking momentum can push themselves into the desirable quadrant of cities with sustained momentum?
Anil, yes. I think from my perspective, what becomes important there is grinding down into the detail of a clear action plan. So the danger is that cities that lose momentum because they're just talking in very high conceptual levels, and they're not actually getting into the detail of what a plan of activity across all pillars looks like to make sure they're identifying the issues they need to address and systematically addressing them. So I think whilst it's great to have a strategy and it's great to think about this at a whole system level, it also becomes really important to drill down into the detail of what is an action plan against all the issues that you recognize and identify you need to address to make your place sustainable. If you just get into a muddle of thinking, oh crikey, we're not quite making it, we must do something, you'll never find what that thing is. You need to do that detailed analysis and planning to come up with your work streams of activity. Not very sexy, not very glamorous, not very innovative, I'm afraid. It just comes down to good old-fashioned program management around solution to an issue.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. The reason I was quite interested in this is I live about 50 miles from Baltimore, and I see Baltimore as one of the cities that sits in that quadrant of lacking momentum. Sometimes I think it's also name recognition. Generally, at least within the US, the city has earned a little bit of a negative image, which probably plays into this as well. Thank you. I think that was excellent. So moving on to our next question, which is again going to be for all of you, sort of midpoint, bringing back the discussions we already have had. The question I want to pose to you is if you can share some case studies of successful city sustainability initiatives / projects, and what lessons can other cities learn from these examples, probably touching on the various aspects, the sub-dimensions of the 4 pillars: energy, mobility, transport, public-private partnerships, and new builds, both commercial and residential. So I'm going to ask Caroline to start. We'll go to Peter, then Celine, and then Stuart.
Yes, let me give 2 examples, and that will build on the remark of Peter Hawke that we have to balance the individual and the collective benefits. And the most beautiful example is public transport. I think we add some extra public infrastructure last years. We have a very fast metro from the north to the south, and it really helps. Tap in, tap out systems are making it very easy to go as fast as possible into the station itself, and it makes it for the individual very easy to use collective public transport. And combined with the measurement to reduce the speed to 30 kilometers, that's about 16 miles, what you have in London, it really makes the city more healthy. People are going to walk and to take the bicycle very more often, and it reduces CO2 emissions and other kind of emissions you don't want to have in a city. So public transport and very modern facilities like tap in, tap out, that really helps, that improves the quality of life in your city immediately. Second example is energy transition, and there is a win-win. Because sustainability is important for the future of our planet, but it also saves a lot of money when you're smart in your energy supply. So when you use and reuse more sustainable energy like solar, wind, geothermal options, district heating, you're smart for the planet, but also smart in your own economic life, and you have more benefits. We do work, for example, convention centers, and within a couple of months, we could save more than 100,000 euros because of the awareness that energy is expensive and that you have to take care of it. We have created a mobility and energy hub of the soccer stadium, the Johan Cruyff Arena, because there are about 100,000 people at the same time, but only once every 2 weeks. So one day in that 14 days is a very expensive one in terms of energy, and the other days you can use for energy savings and for energy transition with storage, with batteries, with off-the-grid kind of solutions. So public transport, energy transition are my 2 examples.
Peter?
Yes, Emil, thank you very much. And I'm going to build on that, and particularly on the mobility point that Caroline raised, because one of the things we find in London is that transport and mobility-led regeneration has an enormous power to improve sustainability. Here in London, we've seen fantastic examples of that with the regeneration, the introduction of the International Eurostar terminal to King's Cross, created around the King's Cross and St Pancras this week, which really improved the economic the environmental and the social sustainability of what had been a really challenged and deprived district of London. Similarly, we've seen the regenerative, the environmental, the economic and the social benefit of better connecting London through the new Crossrail train link that runs east to west across London, and the enormous benefit that that has driven. But I think these examples don't need to be large and monumental. I think it's important to remember that you can have quite small initiatives, seemingly quite small initiatives, that make really, really transformational difference. And one of my favorite examples, and apologies to people, Caroline included, who've heard me reference this one before, I always like to give the example in London of the massive beneficial impact that remodelling Trafalgar Square in the centre of London had on London's sustainability as a city, and certainly the central activity zones sustainability. We moved from having a dead, desolate, deactivated precinct right in the heart of London, almost a national embarrassment, to having one of the most vibrant, active, community supporting, economically successful town city squares in the world. What did we do to achieve that? We did two things. We stopped up one road, which prevented the whole thing becoming a massive road vehicle gyratory, and made it a much more accessible, usable space. And we then created a really good, really effective activation plan for how we were going to use that space. In the grand scheme of things, it cost pennies, but it made a transformational difference to central London sustainability.
Celine?
Thank you. Regarding Paris La Défense, I would say, as it was mentioned earlier, that cooperation is a game changer on sustainability. And I would like to share an action, an example of action we put in place, starting with sobriety, how we do reduce energy consumption. And we organize at La Défense energy saving competitions between buildings, between companies, and it provides tremendous success with energy saving that is related to economic savings and financial saving as well, as Caroline mentioned earlier. For the third year, we have 1 million square meters that enter the competition, 1 million square meters of offices, parking lots, shopping center, and so on, that play and put in place actions all over the years. And the result is an average reduction of 15% of the energy consumption. And these savings are without any investments. It's only behavioral change. The workers are aware of the energy, and they put actions that is quite soft to put in place. And it's also fine-tuning of the systems, the heating system, the system that are in the buildings, and when they are well adjusted, it's a game changer also on the bill. So everything on that is very efficient. In addition, that creates a community because we organize sharing of experiences. So it makes the people and the companies, they gain time because they have access to lots of ideas that people share, and it's very powerful. We use that as a seed for wider activities and public-private partnerships, because we found very engaged people in the businesses that want to change and to be better on sustainability. So we build up on that community to put in place other programs related to the real estate transformation, for example. I could develop that in a moment if we have time.
Stuart?
Thank you. So I have a couple of case studies to talk to you now, but I'll keep it quite brief, acknowledging the time. They're both public-private partnerships. So it's ourselves, and then in both of these instances, working with Salford City Council, Homes England, and Legal and General. One of them I'm sat in front of that you probably could see 30 minutes ago, but not anymore because it's got dark. It's a building called Eden. It's a commercial office development. It's NABAR's 5.5-star rated, and it was the first new build in the country to get that rating. For those that, it's the National Australian Building Energy Rating System, but the UK version. It's got the largest living green wall in Europe on the outside of a building, so it's 350,000 plants. So it's on the busiest road junction in Greater Manchester. So the idea is we're dealing with poor air quality on that junction where cars are waiting and stopping a lot of the time, but the building from its operational perspective is highly performing. It's the most sustainable office building in the north of England. In terms of learning lessons, we have friends from all over Europe come and visit us. Only a month ago, we had one of our Swedish development friends come over and take a tour of the building just to understand a little bit more how it operates, and we plan to do the same back. And that's an absolute priority for us, is learning from the rest of the world, what people are doing well, and what we can implement quite quickly. So that's the commercial office side. The other side of it is, for us, homes and residential development, and a huge focus on delivering low energy bills. So we speak to communities, and a lot of the time they don't know what we mean when we say the word sustainability, or this is going to be a sustainable development. They're more interested in, what does it mean for me? And for us, what does it mean for somebody in a home? It means, well, lower energy bills. So if you use less energy, you pay less, and you have more cash in your pocket to do more and live your life. It's that basic. So we've delivered a passive house, but it's a high density passive house scheme in the north of England. It's first of its kind, but again, we are just open for sharing learnings, experiences. It was really hard. We're doing the next one, it's on site, and we plan to do more and more over the coming years. So yeah, sharing the lessons, learning from others, but actually delivering it. So not just talking about it, getting stuck in, making a bit of a mess, fixing the problems, and figuring it out and getting these things built.
Thank you, Stuart. Excellent. So I also like to look at this as a case where you can look at some bad examples and learn what not to do. I lived in Boston. I tell folks that it's a great example of how not to do mega projects, the infamous Big Dig project, mega project in Boston. Several lessons you can learn of how not to do certain things, especially community engagement. I've lived previously in New Delhi, where there was a pretty tricky BRT project which lacked community involvement. Another example of perhaps avoid certain things when you talk about sustainability initiatives and projects at the city scale. So moving along, in the meantime, I want to remind our audience that the question box is open. Feel free to send any questions and we'll try and integrate those, or we'll probably take them at the end. But moving to the next question about city stakeholders, this one, Celine and then Stuart, I think you briefly touched on it, but perhaps expand a little bit on how can city stakeholders, the public and private sector, along with local communities, work more collaboratively to improve those sustainability outcomes.
Yes, in La Défense, a few years ago, we measured the carbon footprint of the overall territory. It's around 1 million ton CO2 equivalent per year. And the share of our company, our public agency, is 1% of that million. Meaning that whatever our performance is, how good it is, our share is minimal. And we have the objective to cut by half those emissions That means that we need the other to attain our objective, so that trigger us to organize movements, a commitment movement towards our objective, and to put actions on several leverages. This carbon footprint is almost by half based on the real estate industry, meaning the demolition, the construction process, and the existing building. Part of the 3.8 million square meters of offices is about to be obsolete. So we need to trigger investment on those buildings so that they gain efficiency and improve their positioning regarding the sustainability. That leads us to organize a one-year process gathering the real estate community, the investors, the architects, the asset managers, to raise awareness about the risk and the opportunity that represents this built capital we have on the neighborhood, on the district, business district, and to induce a way to promote transformation and retrofitting of buildings instead of demolition, which used to be the tradition, to get rid of old buildings and build wider, higher. It has been over the 65 years of history of La Défense a tendency. So it has changed over years, but we realize that it is important to improve, to enlarge that strategy. And after 1 year of conferences, workshops, we identify several actions that we can put in place, some new tools. We are considering private public investment company to help the transformation of building. That there is a financial issues, huge investments, but we are considering building a private public company to help or induce that movement. And we also organize a process to improve the overall heating system that has been already improved with a stronger part of sustainable sources of energies, but with 40 million euros of investments 2 years ago. But it's not enough, and we gather the community around the improvement, the next improvement, decarbonization of that heating system. That's some of the example of the proposals we gather together, and every stakeholder has a piece of the puzzle of the new neighborhood, the post-carbon neighborhood we want to build. And I think the diffusion of that objective is going on with a change of perspective, and the differentiation between public authorities and private is changing, and the cooperation is powerful, and people are realizing that along with us.
Thanks, Celine. Stuart, do you want to add something briefly?
Of course, yeah. I mean, what we've learned and realised over the last few decades of regenerating, we work across the whole UK. In some of the places, we learned that we can't do things to places. We have to do things with communities and places, and it's the only way that when we leave in 15, 20 years' time, that a community owns the space and actually it has long-term success. So that's kind of number one. And how do we do that? We stakeholder map. We understand the different cultures and needs of a place that are all specific and different. And then I guess we listen. We spend a lot of time listening to communities. That they know their places better than we do. And then we understand what they really want and then try and deliver back to them what the need is from a community's perspective, which can be quite eye-opening and different to what you think is the right thing to do. We like to train people in understanding what sustainability is and living sustainably. We get people to understand their own actions. So, you know, little simple things like, well, I always like to ask on calls like this if people know their own personal carbon footprint, even using a very simple tool and calculator, because it's eye-opening and quite interesting. So just trying to teach a little bit, and back to the very first point, everyone doing a little bit better. You don't have to make huge steps every month. You know, as long as you're a bit better every year, but year on year and consistently improving, it snowballs and really does have a massive impact. So for us, yeah, speaking to communities before we come up with plans and designs and ideas and listening.
Thank you. So I'll try to weave in a question very interestingly, Celine, and probably Peter, you can jump in as well, going back to what you were talking about, a carbon footprint, energy transition. There's a question from the audience which talks about energy transition. So the question says, do you shift in perspective and move to a position that focuses on scaling up renewable energy production, which benefits from economies of scale, negates the need for improving the operational efficiency of buildings? Example from UK, 100% renewable energy by 2035. If a building becomes operationally carbon neutral due to this renewable energy, won't efforts to enhance its efficiency of older buildings potentially emits more carbon? I think they're talking about embodied carbon, than simply maintaining the building in its current state and replacing materials only at the end of their life cycle. So essentially, this trade-off between operational emissions, embodied emissions, use of renewable energies. Celine, any comment briefly on that? And then Peter, we're sort of going to be short on time, so rapid fire from now on.
Yeah, definitely the embodied carbon in a global business district is huge. It's an asset, so that we try to organize a dialogue around keeping that asset and to improve it instead of adding more carbon with lots of new constructions. And the renewable energy is definitely a way to improve the heating system overall.
Peter, anything from the UK?
Yeah, I mean, in a country that has an awful lot of very old building stock, this is a massive issue. So I think really what I would say from our perspective, it's around being innovative and creative in terms of how you can decarbonize building stock, what you can do to address that carbon. It's focusing very, very much on a recycling rather than replacing assets approach. And it's beginning to introduce really, really innovative measures, like, for example, trading in second-hand and reclaimed building materials. Now, historically, that's always been a real cottage industry, but increasingly we need to start doing that at scale if we're going to prevent runaway carbon consumption in our construction and operation of buildings.
Circular economy is key, yeah, definitely.
Thank you. So moving on to our next question, very briefly, but very important. What's the impact of economic climate on a city's ability to accelerate sustainability? So maybe, Carolyn, you can get us started on that question.
Yeah, the economic impact is huge, and we really need to take individual and collective action because otherwise you will not avoid extreme weather events and all kind of that disasters that you don't want to have. And to be honest, in Amsterdam, we have lots of experience with that because we are below sea level. We are there now for 750 years, and we had to do water management and collective action to keep the water out. So public-private partnership is in our DNA, collaboration is in our DNA, and there again, when you have an actionable plan, it is also nice to add better things to the planet, but also to save money and to be a little bit more profitable, for example. And that combination is key, in my opinion. And you have to be smart. And with big data, data analysis, etc., you can do more sustainable asset management. And you can, for example, be smarter in your energy usage by shaving the peaks, by storage, etc., etc. So it's a new kind of business, and that is fun as well because it's new and it has never been done, and we can do it all together.
Celine, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think we currently see convergence between the economic and the environmental issues, which previously it was more separate. There is kind of they are going closer to and same orientations. For example, we see changes in the companies' expectations related to their buildings, the choice of their head office. Today, you can't rent in France, in Paris as well, a building that does not meet the higher standards of sustainability regarding energy savings, carbon footprint, and so on. It's it's useless to try to sell or rent a building that does not require the regulation. And the CSRD in Europe and the building regulation in France makes the ball rolling so that it changes the expectations of the consumers, and that is key to induce that change.
Thanks, Celine. So I think we'll probably look for more questions at this time from the audience. As we get more questions, I'm going to ask each of you to do a 20 to 30 second closing, which combines this issue of prioritization. I'm sure cities don't have unlimited resources, so you have to prioritize. If you want to close and give your closing thoughts on that issue while we look for other questions from the audience, maybe Stuart, then Celine, Carolyn, and then Peter.
Thank you. I don't know. It's such a hard question. It's almost impossible. Prioritize people. I'm a believer in people, and I think if a vision is understood by a large quantum of the community, it drives change. So prioritize people and learning and sharing and understanding, and kind of working cross-sector, cross-partnership. I mean, 2030 is very close in the world that we work in property and long-term regeneration. So from start, it might be 4 or 5 years before we put spades in the ground generally. So 2030 is very, very close for us. And the most impact we have is through our strategic partnerships. So we have a strategic partnership with Homes England, so the government's property and regeneration agency. That one of the partnerships includes Legal and General. We have another partnership that includes PIC, so institutional investment, developers that know what they're doing, and the public sector all working together. The impact is tenfold than if we tried to do things individually. So people and partnerships, that would be my priority.
Celine, then Peter and Carolyn.
Okay, I do share what Peter just said. I think some priorities, we have two or three priorities related to climate change adaptation, so that the district is livable for people to anticipate and take into account that the heat will be stronger, and we have to adjust the neighborhood, improve the part of parks and trees, so that it will be good to live there. And we have a long road to do still. And change of perspective globally. For example, the circular economy can have an interesting role of model change. What if we consider the global business district as a bank of materials, instead of building from scratch, but to capitalize on the built environments? It changes things, but definitely with flexibility and uncertainty, it's very difficult. We are not sure. We have to test and sometimes lose, sometimes gain. But definitely it is a tremendous terrain for opportunities. And the change model is a very passionate and a very interesting part and time for the neighborhood.
Well, to build on that, I think incentivize the good behavior, incentivize, for example, sustainable buildings by creating better tax packages, etc. Create a healthy city, a beautiful city. And when you have a very beautiful square or a beautiful park, people tend to go there and sit on their bicycle, behaving more healthy, etc., etc. So incentivize the good behavior. And in the Netherlands, also taxation helps. For example, parking taxation, then they take more often the bicycle or public transport.
Thanks. Peter?
Yeah, it's easy to be flippant and say all of the above, because I think that was a series of really, really strong answers. I think to me, this really is about making sure that you focused on the carrot more than the stick. So really making the case to people, to organizations, to communities about why this is the right thing to do and why it is important to make these changes and the benefits that will come from doing it. And I think, yeah, it's no accident that at Arcadis we are very, very strong on our improving quality of life mission. And I think it's really important to make the case for why creating sustainable places improves the quality of people's lives. That said, I think it's really important that we're not afraid to use a little bit of judicious stick when it's appropriate. Caroline talked about taxes a moment ago. You know, an example that I would use is in London, back in 2002, we introduced our congestion charge. Everybody said it would kill the economy, it would drive businesses out of London. It did nothing of the sort. 2 years ago, we went further and we introduced our ultra low emission zone. Again, everybody predicted apocalyptic damage to our business and to our economy and to our society. And not a bit of it. That has improved air quality, it has improved quality of life. So I think those sort of well thought through initiatives are valuable too, but focus first on the carrot, not the stick.
Thank you very much. So with this, I think we've run a little bit over time. Apologies for that. But I'd like to thank our panel members. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Celine, Stuart, and thank you very much, Peter, for your valuable time and insights. I want to also thank our partner, Arcadis, for this webinar. Just a quick reminder, we'll be publishing a recording and a written summary of this webinar online. So feel free to share this within your professional networks. Also take a few minutes to tell us how we did today, today's session by completing an online poll that will appear on your screens at the end of this webinar. I also want to highlight that on 5th December, we are running our first inaugural RICS Global Sustainability Conference. which is essentially going to be an online event. We have a number of upcoming webinars. We launched today, in fact, our sustainability report. You can download that. This is an annual report which gives a sentiment survey, close to 5,000 responses, really touching on the important dimensions of green buildings, embodied carbon, biodiversity, and other aspects that we had explained earlier. The conference, you can register by looking at that QR code. Lots of other good webinars happening. Please stay in touch. You can get more information about our upcoming events through rics.org/WBEF or search for World Built Environment Forum on LinkedIn. With that, I'd like to close the session. Thank each one of our participants to be here. I hope you gained something useful. Please do follow us on LinkedIn and send comments. Thank you and goodbye.